Why they fought. The context of the siege, political tensions, and strategic importance. The Siege of Vienna in 1683 was not just a military confrontation but a deeply symbolic struggle between two powerful civilizations. On one side was the Ottoman Empire, a dominant force in the Islamic world, and on the other, the Christian kingdoms of Europe, led by the Habsburg monarchy. This battle was the culmination of centuries of conflict between the Ottomans and European powers, with both sides seeking control over key territories and influence over the future of Europe. For the Ottomans, the siege was a part of their grand strategy to expand their empire into Central Europe. Since the 14th century, the Ottoman Empire had been steadily advancing into Europe, with victories that brought much of the Balkans under their control. By the late 17th century, they were at the height of their power, controlling vast territories stretching from the Middle East to North Africa and deep into southeastern Europe. The conquest of Vienna was seen as the next logical step in their expansion. Vienna was a strategically important city, located at the crossroads of several vital trade routes and serving as the gateway to Western Europe. By capturing Vienna, the Ottomans aimed to destabilize the Habsburg monarchy and open the path for further invasions into Central and Western Europe. In addition to its strategic value, Vienna also held symbolic importance for both sides. For the Ottomans, it represented the heart of Christian Europe, a prize that would signal their dominance over the continent. Sultan Mehmed IV and his Grand Vizier, Kara Mustafa, believed that a victory here would not only cement their power but also gain prestige in the Islamic world, portraying the Ottoman Empire as the protector and spreader of Islam. Kara Mustafa, in particular, sought personal glory, believing that the fall of Vienna would elevate his status and strengthen his political position within the empire. On the European side, the Habsburg monarchy, led by Emperor Leopold I, viewed the defense of Vienna as crucial to their survival. The Habsburgs had long been in conflict with the Ottoman Empire, and the siege represented an existential threat to their rule. If Vienna fell, the road to Western Europe would be open, potentially leading to further Ottoman incursions into German and Italian territories. Vienna's fall could have signaled the collapse of the Habsburg dynasty and the loss of Christian strongholds in Europe. Defending the city was not only a matter of survival for the Habsburgs but also a religious and cultural imperative. European rulers saw themselves as defenders of Christendom, and Vienna's defense became a rallying point for European unity against the Ottoman threat. The decision to lay siege to Vienna was part of a broader campaign by the Ottomans to assert their dominance over the region. Kara Mustafa believed that the time was ripe for a decisive blow against the Habsburgs, who were weakened by internal conflicts and struggles with other European powers. The Ottoman army assembled for the siege was one of the largest ever fielded by the empire, consisting of over 100,000 men, including elite janissaries, heavy artillery, and skilled engineers. They marched towards Vienna with confidence, believing that the city would fall quickly. In contrast, the Habsburgs were initially unprepared for such an assault. Emperor Leopold I had been caught off guard by the size and speed of the Ottoman advance. He fled Vienna before the siege began, leaving the defense of the city in the hands of Count Ernst Rüdiger von Starhemberg. Despite being vastly outnumbered, Starhemberg and the city's defenders resolved to hold out until reinforcements could arrive. For them, the fight was not just about defending a city but about protecting the future of Christian Europe. In the broader sense, the siege was a reflection of the geopolitical and religious tensions that had long shaped relations between the Ottoman Empire and Europe. Both sides fought for control, power, and the preservation of their way of life. The Ottomans sought to expand their empire and spread their influence, while the Europeans fought to defend their territories and their religious identity. The Siege of Vienna became a turning point in this long struggle, and its outcome would have lasting consequences for both empires. The Siege of Vienna was fought because it represented both a strategic and symbolic confrontation between two great powers. The Ottomans, under Kara Mustafa's leadership, sought to expand their empire and gain control of Central Europe, while the Habsburg monarchy fought to preserve its territories and protect Europe from further Ottoman incursions. The battle was a clash of empires, driven by political ambition, military strategy, and religious conviction. Ottoman strategy and siege tactics. The Ottoman strategy during the Siege of Vienna in 1683 was carefully planned and executed with the intent of delivering a swift and decisive victory. Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa, who led the Ottoman forces, believed that the city could be taken through a combination of overwhelming force, siege engineering, and psychological pressure. His approach reflected the centuries of experience the Ottomans had in siege warfare, which had earned them a reputation as one of the most formidable military powers in the world. Kara Mustafa's first major strategic decision was to concentrate a massive army for the siege. The Ottoman force numbered more than 100,000 men, a mix of regular infantry, elite janissaries, cavalry, and artillery. The size of the army alone was intended to intimidate the defenders and force them to surrender without a prolonged fight. In addition, the Ottomans brought significant siege equipment, including large cannons and mortars, which were crucial for bombarding the walls of Vienna. One of the central elements of Ottoman strategy was the use of siege lines. As soon as they reached Vienna, the Ottomans quickly surrounded the city, cutting it off from all outside assistance. The siege lines were designed to prevent supplies, reinforcements, or even communication from reaching the defenders. In this way, the Ottomans hoped to starve Vienna into submission, as hunger and desperation would undermine the morale of its inhabitants and defenders. Kara Mustafa also focused heavily on engineering tactics to breach Vienna's walls. The Ottomans were renowned for their skill in tunneling and mining, and during the siege, they employed teams of engineers to dig tunnels beneath the city's fortifications. The purpose of these tunnels was to place explosives under key sections of the walls and cause them to collapse. This method had been used successfully in previous sieges, and Kara Mustafa was confident that once the walls were breached, his troops could storm the city. The use of artillery was another significant aspect of Ottoman tactics. The Ottomans had some of the largest and most advanced cannons of the time. These cannons were used to bombard the city day and night, weakening its defenses and creating openings for an eventual assault. In addition to conventional cannons, the Ottomans also used mortars to fire explosive shells into the city, hoping to spread chaos and destruction among the civilian population. The Ottomans understood that psychological warfare played an important role in sieges. Kara Mustafa intended to break the will of Vienna's defenders by maintaining constant pressure. This included a relentless artillery barrage, the visible presence of the vast Ottoman army encircling the city, and attempts to demoralize the population by spreading rumors of the Ottomans' overwhelming strength. Kara Mustafa also refrained from launching full-scale assaults on the walls, hoping that the fear of an inevitable attack would push the defenders to surrender before it became necessary. However, Kara Mustafa's strategy had notable weaknesses. His overconfidence led him to delay certain critical actions, such as launching a direct assault on the city. He believed that the mere presence of his army and the threat of starvation would be enough to force a surrender. While this approach had worked in previous sieges, he miscalculated the resilience of Vienna's defenders and the likelihood of European reinforcements. The Ottoman army, though formidable, was primarily structured for open field battles rather than prolonged sieges. Over time, the large force began to suffer from supply shortages. While the Ottomans had cut off Vienna from external supplies, their own logistics were stretched thin. As the siege dragged on, these supply problems worsened, affecting the morale and combat readiness of the troops. Another critical element of the Ottoman plan was the Janissaries, an elite infantry force known for their discipline and battlefield prowess. The Janissaries were typically used in the final stages of a siege to deliver a decisive blow. However, during the Siege of Vienna, Kara Mustafa held back the Janissaries, confident that they would only be needed once the city's walls had been breached. This hesitation allowed the defenders more time to repair damage to the fortifications and prepare for a final assault. Ultimately, the Ottoman strategy relied on a combination of military superiority, siege expertise, and psychological pressure. They believed that Vienna would fall either through starvation or a breach of the walls. However, the failure to account for the possibility of outside intervention and the resilience of Vienna's defenders would prove to be a fatal flaw in their plan. The Ottomans used a variety of tactics during the siege, including encirclement, mining, heavy artillery bombardment, and psychological warfare. Their strategy was designed to break the city's defenses and morale without the need for a costly direct assault. However, their overconfidence, logistical challenges, and failure to launch a decisive attack in time allowed Vienna to hold out until relief forces arrived, ultimately leading to the collapse of their siege. The defenders of Vienna and their response. One of the most determined and desperate efforts in the history of siege warfare. Outnumbered and surrounded by one of the largest armies the Ottoman Empire had ever assembled, the defenders, led by Count Ernst Rüdiger von Starhemberg, fought to protect their city and, by extension, the future of Christian Europe. Their response to the Ottoman siege was a mixture of tactical ingenuity, unyielding discipline, and a profound understanding of the strategic importance of holding out long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Count Ernst Rüdiger von Starhemberg was appointed as the military commander of Vienna just before the siege began. A seasoned soldier, Starhemberg had served in various conflicts and understood the complexities of both offensive and defensive warfare. When Emperor Leopold I fled the city, leaving Starhemberg in charge, the Count knew the odds were heavily against him. The city's defenses were in a weakened state, and the garrison was vastly outnumbered by the approaching Ottoman forces. Despite these disadvantages, Starhemberg immediately took steps to organize an effective defense. One of his first priorities was to strengthen Vienna's fortifications. Though the city's medieval walls were formidable, they were vulnerable to the kind of modern siege tactics the Ottomans had perfected. Starhemberg ordered repairs to the walls and ramparts, focusing especially on sections that had deteriorated or that might be targeted by the Ottoman artillery. He also worked to improve the city's bastions, defensive outposts designed to provide overlapping fields of fire for the garrison's cannons and muskets. These positions were critical in resisting Ottoman attempts to breach the walls. The defenders of Vienna included not only trained soldiers but also volunteers from among the civilian population. Starhemberg organized these civilians into militia units, assigning them specific tasks to assist the professional soldiers. Many of these volunteers were tasked with logistical support, such as bringing ammunition and supplies to the front lines, while others helped repair damaged sections of the walls or fought in the defensive lines. Starhemberg's ability to maintain morale among both the soldiers and civilians was crucial. The defenders knew they were fighting not only for their city but for the survival of their entire culture. Starhemberg was acutely aware that Vienna's ability to withstand the siege would depend on its ability to slow down the Ottoman advance as much as possible. The Ottomans had superior numbers and more artillery, but the defenders had the advantage of fighting on familiar ground behind well-prepared defenses. Starhemberg employed tactical discipline to ensure that his forces did not engage in reckless attacks or counteroffensives. His strategy was to hold the walls, repel Ottoman assaults, and disrupt their mining operations. Patience and endurance were key to the defensive effort, as every day the city held out increased the likelihood that a relief army would arrive. A significant part of the Ottoman siege strategy involved mining and tunneling, as they sought to dig under the city's walls and plant explosives to create breaches. Starhemberg anticipated this tactic and organized counter-mining operations. These involved sending small teams of miners and engineers to dig tunnels of their own, seeking out Ottoman tunnels and destroying them before they could reach the city's foundations. The counter-mining efforts were dangerous and grueling, with constant underground skirmishes between the defenders and Ottoman engineers. However, they were essential in preventing key sections of the walls from collapsing under Ottoman mines. Despite their relentless defense, Vienna's defenders faced serious challenges. Supplies of food, water, and ammunition were running low as the siege dragged on. The Ottomans had completely encircled the city, preventing any resupply efforts, and the bombardment from Ottoman artillery was taking a toll on both the fortifications and the morale of the population. Yet Starhemberg's leadership was crucial in keeping the defenders focused. He maintained strict discipline, punishing any signs of desertion or panic, while also boosting morale through acts of bravery and solidarity with his men. Starhemberg himself often appeared on the front lines, encouraging the defenders and taking part in the defense. In response to the Ottoman bombardment, the defenders used their own artillery strategically. While they had fewer cannons than the Ottomans, they positioned them at key points along the walls and bastions to create interlocking fields of fire. This allowed them to concentrate their cannon fire on Ottoman positions that were most threatening, such as areas where the Ottomans were massing troops for an assault or where their artillery was inflicting the most damage. The defenders also used small-caliber artillery and muskets to target Ottoman engineers and sappers working on the siege lines, slowing down their efforts to weaken Vienna's walls. Another crucial element of Vienna's defense was repair and reinforcement. After every Ottoman artillery barrage, teams of defenders, including soldiers and civilians, worked tirelessly to repair any breaches in the walls and fortifications. Starhemberg had organized these efforts in advance, ensuring that materials such as stones, timber, and earth were ready to be used for emergency repairs. This constant maintenance of the walls prevented the Ottomans from capitalizing on their bombardments, and each repaired breach was a sign to the defenders that the city could still hold out. As the siege wore on, the defenders received news that a relief army, led by Polish King Jan III Sobieski, was marching to their aid. Knowing that help was on the way bolstered morale, but it also increased the urgency of their defense. The Ottomans, sensing that time was running out, intensified their assaults on the walls, trying to break through before the relief army arrived. In response, Starhemberg and his forces fought with even greater determination, holding their positions and repelling Ottoman attempts to storm the city. The defenders' tenacity paid off when the relief army finally arrived in early September. The defenders had held the Ottomans at bay long enough for the coalition forces of Poland, the Holy Roman Empire, and other European states to assemble and march toward Vienna. Starhemberg's strategy of endurance and delaying tactics had succeeded in buying time, ensuring that the city would not fall before help arrived. The defenders' efforts, combined with the arrival of the relief army, ultimately led to the Ottoman retreat and the lifting of the siege. The defense of Vienna was a masterclass in resilience and tactical ingenuity. Starhemberg and his forces used every resource available to them, from the city's fortifications to the courage of its citizens. They countered Ottoman tunneling with their own mining efforts, maintained disciplined artillery fire, and worked tirelessly to repair damage from the bombardments. Most importantly, they held the walls and kept the Ottoman army at bay long enough for reinforcements to arrive, saving the city and altering the course of European history. The relief army and the battle tactics of the Christian coalition. The arrival of the relief army, led by the Christian coalition, was the decisive turning point in the Siege of Vienna. This army was made up of forces from several European states, united in their mission to save the city from falling to the Ottomans. The coalition included troops from the Holy Roman Empire, Bavaria, Saxony, and notably, a large contingent from Poland, led by its king, Jan III Sobieski. Their combined strength and well-coordinated tactics would prove instrumental in breaking the Ottoman siege and ending one of the most critical military confrontations in European history. King Jan III Sobieski played a pivotal role in organizing the relief effort. As the ruler of Poland, Sobieski was known for his military expertise, particularly his use of cavalry, and he took personal command of the coalition army. Upon learning of Vienna's desperate situation, Sobieski moved quickly, gathering an army of around 70,000 soldiers. He understood that speed was essential since Vienna's defenders, led by Count Ernst Rüdiger von Starhemberg, were running out of time. The city was under constant bombardment, and supplies were critically low. The coalition forces made a daring decision to march over the Carpathian Mountains to reach Vienna in time. This move required great logistical coordination, as the terrain was difficult and the soldiers needed to stay in fighting condition. However, this maneuver allowed them to approach the Ottomans from the north, taking advantage of the high ground that overlooked the besieging forces. The Christian coalition had a diverse mix of infantry, artillery, and cavalry, each contributing to the eventual victory. Among these, the most famous unit was the Polish Winged Hussars, an elite cavalry force that Sobieski had personally trained. Known for their discipline, heavy armor, and long lances, the Winged Hussars were considered one of the finest cavalry forces in Europe at the time. Their presence would be crucial during the final assault on the Ottoman lines. Upon arriving near Vienna on September 11, 1683, Sobieski and his generals devised a plan to break the Ottoman siege. The coalition army positioned itself on the high ground of the Vienna woods, giving them a commanding view of the Ottoman encampments and siege works. The Ottomans, led by Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa, had concentrated their forces around Vienna, but they had not anticipated an attack from this direction. Mustafa believed his massive army and siege tactics would be sufficient to capture the city, and he had neglected to properly defend against an external relief force. The coalition's battle plan was simply yet effective. They would launch a coordinated attack on multiple fronts, using their infantry and artillery to pin down the Ottomans while their cavalry waited for the right moment to strike. The attack was set for the morning of September 12th. Sobieski himself would lead the cavalry charge at the critical moment. The battle began with the coalition's infantry and artillery advancing from the Vienna woods toward the Ottoman lines. The infantry, made up of German, Austrian, and Polish troops, moved in disciplined formations, supported by artillery fire that targeted Ottoman positions. Their goal was to engage the Ottomans and draw their attention away from the impending cavalry assault. The infantry pushed forward steadily, forcing the Ottomans to shift their focus from the city to the coalition army on the hills. Kara Mustafa, realizing he was under attack from an unexpected direction, scrambled to reposition his forces. However, the Ottomans were spread thin, as they were still maintaining the siege on Vienna while now facing a large coalition army. The Ottomans' artillery and janissaries, their elite infantry, were pulled away from the siege lines to meet the advancing coalition forces, creating gaps in the Ottoman defenses. As the Ottoman forces became increasingly stretched and disorganized, Sobieski seized the moment. In the late afternoon, he ordered the famous cavalry charge of the Polish Winged Hussars. With Sobieski at the head, around 20,000 cavalrymen, including the Hussars, charged down the slopes of the Vienna woods toward the Ottoman lines. The sight of the heavily armored Hussars, with their wings attached to their backs creating a fearsome noise as they thundered toward the enemy, had a psychological impact on the Ottomans. The sheer speed and power of the charge overwhelmed the Ottoman troops, who were already struggling to contain the advancing infantry. The Winged Hussars smashed into the Ottoman lines with devastating force. The Ottomans, unable to regroup or organize an effective counterattack, began to break under the pressure. The coalition cavalry cut through their ranks, targeting key positions and commanders, including the Ottoman artillery. This cavalry assault was one of the largest in history and decisively broke the morale of the Ottoman army. As the Ottoman forces retreated in chaos, the coalition infantry pushed forward, further driving the Ottomans from their siege lines. Inside Vienna, Starhemberg's defenders, who had been holding the walls under relentless attack for months, saw the sudden collapse of the Ottoman positions and launched a sortie from the city, attacking the remaining Ottoman troops from the rear. This two-pronged assault left the Ottomans with no choice but to flee. Kara Mustafa, realizing the battle was lost, ordered a retreat, but it was too late. The Ottoman army, once an imposing force of over 100,000 men, was now in full retreat, and many were cut down as they fled. The Siege of Vienna was broken, and the city was saved. The tactics used by the Christian coalition, particularly the coordination between infantry and cavalry, were critical to their success. The coalition infantry engaged the Ottomans long enough to create confusion, while the cavalry charge delivered the decisive blow. The ability to combine these forces effectively, along with the coalition's use of high ground and superior coordination, allowed them to outmaneuver and overpower the Ottomans. In the aftermath of the battle, Jan III Sobieski was hailed as the savior of Vienna and Europe. His decisive leadership, particularly his role in leading the Winged Hussars, earned him lasting fame. The victory at Vienna marked the beginning of the decline of the Ottoman Empire's influence in Europe, while also reinforcing the strength of the Christian powers, who had united to face a common threat. The relief army's tactics were based on coordination, timing, and exploiting Ottoman weaknesses. Sobieski's strategic use of the high ground, combined with disciplined infantry advances and the devastating cavalry charge of the Winged Hussars, shattered the Ottoman siege. The coalition's victory not only saved Vienna but also shifted the balance of power in Europe, marking the beginning of the end for Ottoman expansion into the continent. The defeat at the Siege of Vienna in 1683 had profound consequences for both the Ottoman Empire and Europe. The defeat marked the end of Ottoman expansion into Central Europe and began the empire's gradual decline. The aftermath of the siege reshaped military, political, and religious dynamics for years to come. For the Ottomans, the loss was a symbolic and strategic blow. It ended their territorial ambitions in Central Europe, and they were never able to recover their former influence. This defeat exposed internal problems within the empire, such as military stagnation and administrative inefficiencies. In the years following the siege, the Ottomans faced pressure on multiple fronts, losing territories, including in the Treaty of Karlowitz in 1699. This marked the beginning of the empire's territorial contraction and weakening power. The rise of European coalition warfare was another significant outcome. The Christian alliance, led by Poland's King Jan III Sobieski, demonstrated the power of unity among European states. This cooperation laid the groundwork for future alliances, as European powers realized the benefits of working together against common enemies. Coalition warfare became increasingly common in later conflicts, such as the Napoleonic Wars, and was critical to balancing power in Europe. The evolution of siege warfare and military tactics was also influenced by the siege. The battle highlighted the growing importance of artillery and fortifications. The defenders of Vienna used artillery and fortifications effectively to withstand Ottoman attacks, while the Ottomans struggled with adapting to protracted sieges. The Polish Winged Hussars cavalry charge, which broke the Ottoman lines, underscored the continued value of cavalry in battle, even in an era dominated by gunpowder. The victory at Vienna also had important geopolitical consequences for Central Europe. The Habsburg monarchy, on the brink of collapse, emerged as a dominant power in the region. The Habsburgs expanded their influence in Hungary and the Balkans as the Ottomans retreated. This expansion reshaped the political map of Central Europe and set the stage for future conflicts between European powers vying for control over former Ottoman territories. Finally, the role of religion played a key part in the siege. The battle was seen as a clash between Christian Europe and the Islamic Ottoman Empire. The victory was celebrated as a triumph for Christianity, with the Pope declaring it divine intervention. This religious significance reinforced anti-Ottoman sentiment and heightened the divide between Christian and Muslim worlds. However, in the years following, political and territorial ambitions gradually began to overshadow religious motivations in European conflicts. The Siege of Vienna marked the beginning of the Ottoman Empire's decline, the rise of coalition warfare in Europe, and changes in military tactics. It reshaped Central Europe's political landscape and reinforced the religious divide between Christian Europe and the Ottoman world. The siege had lasting consequences for both sides, influencing the course of European and Ottoman history. Imagine you are Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa, leading the Ottoman forces in the Siege of Vienna. With the goal of expanding the Ottoman Empire into Europe, how would you adjust your strategy to ensure victory? What tactics would you use to overcome the city's defenses and defeat the Christian coalition? Share your thoughts in the comments, and I'm eager to see how you would approach this critical moment in history.